nice to meet you all. I'm not going to tell you how to run inflatable equipment, of course I'm not. But there are certain things that you need to know and you may not be aware of, particularly in the light of the tragic incident at Harlow, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And subsequently after that, we had another one blow away in Swanage. So the idea is, we're going to talk about wind. Well, if wind affects you or I, it's sort of dealt with and got rid of. But in terms of inflatables, wind can have quite catastrophic effects. This is actually in America, and I quite deliberately picked that picture, but basically the outcome's the same. Wind gets underneath and it blows it away if it's not connected correctly. So how do we know? How do we know what to do? It's really, really simple. We have a thing called EN 14960, which is a guidance note for the manufacture and operation of inflatables. And within the standard, it states the maximum wind speed in which inflatables shall be used outdoors is 38 kilometres per hour or 24 miles per hour, which equates to force 5 on the Beaufort scale. Everybody know about the Beaufort scale? I didn't, so I looked it up. The Beaufort scale is a thing that was designed by a guy called Sir Francis Beaufort in 1805. And basically what it does, it gives us a table from nothing up to 73 miles an hour, or 117 kilometres per hour on a scale of 1 to 12. The one that we're interested in is number 5 on that scale. So that's where it comes from. That's just so you know. So the Beaufort scale says, how do we measure 24 miles an hour? Well, if you get a leafy small tree and it starts to do that, it sways, that's 24 miles an hour. Pretty scientific, one would say. But in its day, in 1805, I guess that's all they had. Fortunately, where we are today, we have things called anemometers, which measure wind speed. And I've actually got 3 for us to look at as example. Now these things can cost as little as £10, right up to about 100 quid for the more sophisticated. So we're going to look at those. This is the first type, which is a little handheld device. Looks something like this. I bought this one about 3 months ago on Amazon for 7 quid. And basically all that happens is you turn it on, you hold it up into the wind, it spins round and round, and then you get a reading. So that's all well and good, but you will need to manually record the time and wind speed on a sheet. So in your particular situation, you'd have a member of staff that every 15 minutes would go, oh yeah, that's all right, writes it on a bit of paper. And we've heard lots about bits of paper today, haven't we? How we have to keep records, and these are the sorts of things. And then you file them away. So after each day, or each time this thing goes up, you record it, and eventually you have a system or a record going back which says this is what I do. So if you end up in court, they're not going to say, well, you made that up, whether you did or you didn't. So it's one way of doing it. We go up a notch, so now we're going into the £30 to £60 bracket. We have one of these little things. Now, everybody has smartphones these days, don't you? Of course you do. Oh, that went quiet, didn't it? So you can get this little gizmo. You plug it into your socket on your smartphone. You have an app, download, which goes with it. You hold it up into the wind, and what this does, it actually records on your phone where you were, which part of the world you were in, and what the wind speed was and the time. So that's then on the app, and when you go back, you can download that information into your computer and you save a computerised record. These you can buy direct from the manufacturer for about £60, but if you go on Amazon, they're only £30. So that gives you another recording system. So now we've done away with our bit of paper, but we can electronically record it. The next one is this little thing. You stick it up on a pole and it spins round and round, and every 15 seconds it records the wind speed and it sends it back to this little gizmo. So you actually don't have to do anything. It's recording continually from where you are, the speed, and it's every 15 seconds. It stores that information, and again you take it back at the end of the day and you download the files from here onto your computer. And those, I bought that particular system in Matlins in their sale for 80 quid. It doesn't take a man. A lot of my Showmen colleagues down south now have a big pole, they stick it in the centre of the site and they walk away and leave it. And it just covers their requirement. You're the first people to see these, and I'm not going to actually demonstrate it, but I can show you, and we'll demonstrate it at the end of the day. This little gizmo, basically you stick it on top of your inflatable with a bit of Velcro, you turn it on, and when the wind speed reaches 24 mile an hour, you get an audible sound. Now, talking to Showmen colleagues, they said, well, that's all right, but fairgrounds are quite noisy. So we went back to the manufacturer and said, I think you've got a relevant point. So I came up with the Mark II, and I literally got this yesterday. And this one, as well as having the audible sound, the whole thing lights up, so it flashes at you. So that's another way of easily knowing when the wind speed is excessive. That's the lovely one. The standard also states, when used outdoors, the inflatable shall be secured to the ground, preferably with ground stakes where the ground is suitable. In other words, it's saying we are fully aware that there are different types of ground conditions that will affect the way that you stake the thing down. Each anchorage point on the inflatable and all of the components of the anchorage or ballast system, e.g. ropes, webbings, metal attachments, stakes, weights, shall withstand a force of 1600 newtons. That's double Dutch, isn't it? So 1600 newtons actually equates to 163 kilos of weight. So if you've got a little tiny inflatable that's got 6 anchor points on it, you've got to put 163 kilos of weight on each anchor point, which in layman's terms means about a ton. Now, you guys don't have to worry too much, because all you do is you tie it to a truck. Basically, it's not going to move. One of the things that I was very fortunate to have a glimpse of was earlier this year, an ADIPS colleague wrote a paper on how a bigger stake would allow an inflatable to be operated at over 24 miles an hour. And it was a really, really interesting piece of work. And it started at the standard stake, 380mm, went right up to sort of half a metre, you know, a metre, 3 feet, whatever. Great, absolutely great, with the corresponding figures. And I think we got up to you know, sort of 300 kilos and whatever before the thing would move, and it was really interesting. Where it fell down was, inflatables are designed to take the maximum 163 kilos. In other words, you can put the biggest stake that would never move, the heaviest lorry or whatever that would never ever move, but an inflatable could fail at 163 kilos at wind speeds over 24 mile an hour. So it's really quite simple. If the wind speed or the predicted wind speed is over 24 mile an hour, I think at the moment where we are now, it's between 40 and 90. So there should be no inflatables up anywhere. Irrespective of whether it gets to those speeds, if an inflatable blows away and you end up in court, they will look at the wind speed records from the Met Office on that day. It's as simple as that. So each inflatable design has a number of anchor points. How do we get there? Dead easy really. You measure the surface area, you multiply it by 114, you divide it by 1600 and multiply it by 1.5. That will tell you how many anchor points you need. You're not expected to do that. It's up to the inspection team on your annual inspections of inflatables to make sure that you've got the right number, and it's fair to assume a lot of manufacturers will put extra ones in to do with the design. There's lots of work going on right now as we speak, so a lot of stuff might change in the next 12, 24 months as a result of these things blowing away. Lots and lots of things going on, but it is what it is at the minute. My advice to everybody is, if it's got anchor points on the unit, don't matter what you think, use them. Because if you get an incident of any kind, the first thing that the HSE man is going to say, where's all your stakes? And then he's going to count the anchor points on the unit. If there's a dozen and you've only got 6, he's going to say, where are the other 6? Where the standard sort of falls down, all it says is that once you've worked it out, the anchor points have to be distributed evenly around the perimeter. That's all it says. It doesn't actually say you put them at ground level, halfway up, on the top. It doesn't say that. So, as an inspector, you expect to see the required amount around the bottom end, because that's what's going to keep it up. Are you all aware of moonwalks, where you've got the bouncy bed that's inflated by one pump, and then you've got the bit that goes over the top, the domey bit that's inflated by another one, which is just basically a thin piece of material, yeah? You're looking blank at me. Yes, well, I think so. If you just imagine, if we put all the anchor points around the top, then there's actually nothing holding the bottom, because the bottom's still going to raise in, because the bit that's floating on the top isn't actually doing anything. It's just there to contain the user, not to stick the thing on the ground. On a solid walled unit, you have them on the ground, you will often find anchor points around the top. Designers will tell you they are there to protect the interior structure of the inflatable. They're not necessarily there to keep it tied down, they're more to stop it swaying side to side. So that's worth bearing in mind. Again, if it's got anchor points on the top, use them. Stick your ropes on, pull them down. And that doesn't mean pull it down the side, put it to the anchor point on the bottom, just put one stake in. It doesn't work. You put extra loading on the bottom, then you've got a problem. So that's my presentation. I'll quite happily listen to any questions and do my best to give you a really simple, straightforward answer. What I would say is, I visit some pals on a showground in the summer, and what they've done is they've gone to the trouble of putting ropes all the way over the inflatable and then pulling it down. So I said to them, well, A, if you think you need to do that, then maybe it shouldn't be up in the first place. But what they were actually doing was interfering with the structural design of that unit. So you have to be very, very careful about, you know, how you go about it. 24 mile an hour, take them down, or it might well blow away. So there you go.
Any questions? Yes, David?
In my experience, I've seen several moonwalks blow away.
Right.
Does the increased air pressure inside the dome, which should be higher than the pressure outside the dome, does that create lift?
Yes, it can do. That's why the fan on those has got a regulator on it, and it's up to the operator to understand how he needs to regulate it. Simple as that.
Thanks, David. Any other questions?
Brilliant.
We're good.
They're all experts, you see.